Hello and welcome to this afternoon's live stream with Avero Advisors. My name is AV. I'm the founder and CEO at Avero. We are an independent IT and management consulting firm that help local government modernize their operations through the use of technology or effective strategic planning. With me today, I have Clay Brooks, our senior consultant that is doing some groundbreaking work in the field of artificial intelligence, something we've talked about together at ICMA last month, and we are back with more updates on the state of the AI revolution and what is going on that might impact your life. Clay, welcome to the show. I know this is your first live stream.
Thanks to AV. I'd be careful about calling it an AI revolution just yet. It might
No.
scare some people.
All right, so let's talk about that, right? So before we go on, I wanna make sure we showcase our 2025 GovTech report. Scan the barcode. It's got some great information on trends to look for next year. I know we're still in 24, but it's kind of Q4, and I read something yesterday that said that October is the new Jan 1. Like, start planning now. And so lots of great information, including on ERP modernization and AI on this report. See what you like, what you don't. Please reach out to tell us what you think. I'm going to leave the QR code up here. And if you're joining us live today, tell us where you're joining from. The chat box is open for your questions, and we look forward to a lively discussion on this wonderful topic. So, uh, Clay, tell us a little bit about you because the audience has not met Clay before.
Hello. I'm very happy to be going live for Avero Advisors. I want this to happen more often. I have a lot to share. So, I'm a senior consultant at Avero Advisors. My background is in finance as well as the software industry. So, I've worked in banking and also in various departments in a software company. So I've seen a lot, and I think that that informs how I approach what we do here at Avero, which is largely focused around IT strategy and enterprise software procurement and implementation.
Yeah, and a lot of what you've done at Avero has been, I would call it cutting edge with transforming how we produce deliverables and how our products look. But what I'm most excited about is your latest foray into all things AI. Clay and I did not a live stream, but we spoke at ICMA on implementing AI and machine learning at in local governments in Pittsburgh last month, and we had about 100 people attend our session.
We
And the
packed the
question,
house.
yeah, and it was very very interactive. And what I took from it is we are so early on in all things AI that it's hard for us to pinpoint where the applications and the use cases are going. Of course, you're seeing chatbots, you're seeing very basic applications of AI in the real world in GovTech. For example, summarizing notes from meeting minutes and things like that. All things considered, there's so much more that is about to happen in GovTech and AI, and we are doing some work around that already with our clients. So one of the cool things that Clay is doing is Clay is part of the GovAI coalition, and so am
Mhm.
I, and so is Avero. But this is a cool little coalition that has been put together primarily by the city of San Jose. And correct me if I'm wrong, Clay, but there's a lot of interest. There's about 1,000 participants, and they have multiple weekly meetings where they talk about all things AI and its impact on government technology. So tell us, Clay, a little bit about the GovAI Coalition, what it is, what their mission is, and what we've done with them so far.
Oh, I'd be so happy to talk about the GovAI Coalition. I have been having such an enlightening time being involved with these discussions. So, the Government AI Coalition, like you said, it's spearheaded by the city of San Jose, California. And it is a coalition of people from now hundreds of public sector agencies. On their website, it says over 300 public sector agencies are currently a part of the Government AI Coalition. And this is not just government agencies, like elected officials and employees of those agencies, but it's software vendors as well, which I think is very fascinating. It's a collaborative effort that is going to help inform policies and set the bar for what will be the industry standard best practices in the future. So I just think it's super exciting to be a part of it and to be volunteering and just even listening and asking questions and taking notes, really getting a temperature check on how people are feeling in a lot of these different sectors about the emergence of AI. So I've been attending the working group sessions and the committee meetings. I just want to be involved in like building the future.
Wow, what a great way to put it, right? So, what you said something about people being worried. What are people worried about
Well,
as they talk about? And let's preface this, right? This is probably one of many coalitions, but this is one that has probably gotten the most traction so far on the GovAI side. And you've been involved for the last 3 weeks now on um, attending meetings and talking to people that are in the coalition. So, what seem to be the themes and concerns that people have?
well, the one thing that I've noticed that is coming up more than anything, alongside things like that I expected, such as what use cases are going to be good, data privacy, data management, use policies. Something that's coming up a lot is there's been many terms for it, but they've been calling it things like shadow AI
Mhm.
or Trojan horse
Ooh,
AI. And I'm
okay.
like, wow, that is a word. Those are terms that we are coining right now as we speak. And it's being used to describe how some software services, these vendors, are just updating their softwares because they're in the cloud, right?
Mhm.
They're just updating their softwares and adding AI features with very little warning. And our public sector agencies, whenever this happens, they can feel blindsided
Yeah.
and unprepared. So a lot of the conversations in these coalition meetings involve agencies talking to other agencies about what they're doing to just keep up with the pace of innovation.
I mean, that's scary. Now, my mind immediately goes to contract negotiations and ownership of data, right? When you sign a SaaS contract, it's very clearly mentioned in MSAs and contracts generally that you own the data. Now, this is opening a can of worms where you're saying vendors are releasing AI components to their products without necessarily telling the clients. They may be releasing disclaimers that you have to click through because it's an update or whatnot. But that means that AI functionality that is using your data to provide that service to you is being sneakily introduced. And that's the shadow AI part of it. You may be using AI and you may have data compromised to a large language model without your knowledge. Is that what the fear is?
It's a combination of several factors. That is one of the fears. That is one of the concerns. We'll call them concerns. How about that? That's
Yeah.
one of the concerns is data ownership. And another one from the privacy working group that I found very fascinating is some people have actually already agreed to these things being implemented in their software without knowing it.
Mhm.
Because there are some clauses that are like, we can use your data for any future technology to provide you our service. And people just agree to that and they don't know what it means. So you're right about the contracts being a large part of what people need to start paying attention to is contracts in the procurement process with these software vendors, those terms of service that people click through, they actually can be important to read for
Mhm.
legal reasons.
Yeah. So what does an agency do if the software we bought has suddenly started producing or offering um, AI functionality without specifically asking permission for it? Like I get it. I'm a I'm an early adopter. If something is providing, and like I on the iOS now I have the beta, right, so that I can
Mhm.
play with Apple Intelligence, which is okay. But how does someone that is more guarded about letting um, AI run through their data and their systems. How do they counteract this? What's the discussion been around protecting yourself from shadow AI?
That's a good discussion to have, and it's a discussion that's had in almost every one of these meetings. A lot of them are about like how to they're just trying to keep up. They're trying to like things have already happened that they are trying to backtrack and take care of,
Hmm.
such as sending out requests. Like they first of all, a lot of them are developing policies, and the way you do that politically is definitely up to the agency, but they will develop a policy and then they will inform all of their software vendors about this policy and say, hey, because of our policy, you need to give us this information. You need to tell us what large language model is being employed. You need to tell us what our data is being used for in this category, in this category, in this category. And they are putting that onus on the software vendors to comply with their policies rather than being blindsided, like you said, by this shadow AI. So
Hmm.
that's been a theme in these discussions, is being able to proactively be the ones who set the bar.
Yeah, and policy work is something that we're doing for some of our clients, right? It's when we do IT strategic planning, a big component now is how does AI play a role in the future for your organization? So policy is a big piece of it. I had a question yesterday with someone asking me if we have a template for AI policy. We could easily say yes, but it really depends on your organization, what you want to use AI for. How do you philosophically think about this? Are your systems even ready, right? You might have some on-premise old systems that are not connected to the cloud, and it's a premature discussion at that point.
Right. Are your data and your computer systems ready? But also, is your organization as a whole ready? Are the people
Yeah.
ready? Are your policies ready? And while we're talking about the GovAI Coalition, I just wanted to give them a shout out in the city of San Jose, because that is part of what they're doing. Is they have AI policy templates available on their website that are meant to be used piecemeal, like you were talking about. They're modular, depending
Yeah.
on where you are in your organization's journey towards implementing AI. They have a lot of different pieces and parts that you can use in your policies. And they come from all hundreds of organizations that have been involved in this coalition so far, and they're going to keep evolving as technology changes, and they're built for that because nothing is going to stay the same over the next few months. That's the only guarantee. So they have to be flexible enough policies to keep pace.
Yeah. Well, and I saw a stat or an opinion rather this morning about um I forget who it was, but they said 99% of the all of the AI things are going to fail. It's going to be a bubble. Of course, I think that is a little too pessimistic. I do think that there's a lot of noise, like we've talked about before. Um, and attending these meetings with tell us about meetings where there's more vendors present than potential consumers of this technology. And is there noise? Are people doing the same thing? Are they disclosing what they're up to? What are these discussions like?
The vendors don't talk very much in a lot of these meetings, at least the ones I've been in. They are mostly there to observe. Um, However, in some of these committee meetings, like for example, the use cases meetings, if a vendor shows up and someone has a question about, let's say, an internal large language model chatbot that they want to use to search their database for policies and procedures manuals, and someone's in there that does offer that service, the entire conversation points to that person, and then they basically do an impromptu 20-minute demo answering everyone's questions because so many people have questions. And they've begun just hosting like rapid fire 15-minute demo sessions where there's 4 vendors that have 15 minutes each within an hour to present their product and just get them in front of people. Not only that, they are building a database, okay, this is the most exciting thing. They are building a AI registry. And this is the committee that I've been most interested in volunteering on. They're building an AI registry where vendors will submit fact sheets about their product.
Hmm.
And these are all going to go into a database where people can search through this database and learn more about AI product offerings that are being built for, or at least customized for, the public sector. I think that's just such an exciting prospect.
Yeah. So let's take some questions.
Okay, we have questions.
Um, Lexi says most government organizations are unfortunately known for being slow to modernize, sometimes for good reason. Is this different when it comes to AI? Are they more leaning more into this modernization? What seems to be the sentiment? Because you and I know when we go do IT strategic plans for organizations or even ERP implementations, it's been a long time since they've embraced something new technologically. What seems to be different with AI? Is it a sense of here's a way we need to kind of prep ourselves for this, or is it specific use cases and problems that people are trying to solve with AI?
That's a two-part answer. I hope I can explain. So, there are so many real use cases for products that are currently available right now.
Hmm.
And they solve problems that local governments are having right now. They don't have enough people employed to be keeping up with the pace of their citizens' needs. And the use cases that are currently available can really help, like 311 automations. And so those kinds of really basic things
Hmm.
are typically going to be adopted with a lot less pushback. But there's nuance to that,
Yeah.
because it's a little political. Some organizations, just as a whole, are more open to new technologies. Some organizations are more resistant. You use the example a lot about what was that? The police station, the records management system. Do
Hmm.
you want to tell that story again? Because I just think that one's so interesting.
Yeah, and it came out of I think a question we got at the panel we did at ICMA with the adoption, and sort of the same question that I asked you is how are agencies feeling about AI? Are we the only ones that are afraid of this? We were working with a large public safety organization in the US, and we were helping them pick a new records management system. And so the vendors were in there presenting their latest and greatest offerings. A lot of them had uh, several AI components to it and automation related to that, where if Clay gets pulled over, Clay's information is immediately into the RMS using AI. It knows which code you violated, how much you were speeding, the body cam footage, and the interaction with the officer. All of that's captured into the RMS, and it's right away populated into the central database, so that there is no going back to the police station to type in data. So as the vendor showcasing this, what to me is wonderful functionality, because it helps you solve several problems of time, accuracy, and your labor shortage. Um, the audience was like, "Don't show us anything because we
They
don't
didn't
want to
even
look
want to
at
see
AI."
it.
And upon further probing, I realized that they didn't want to look at it because either IT said no, and legal said no, and someone else said no. And the root of all of this is, I think, a lack of deep understanding, A, and two, lack of policies too, right? You don't want
Yes.
to jump into something that is not ready management wise, because
Hmm.
especially in a police department, those kind of things can have massive repercussions, and we should probably do a session on that, uh,
Hmm.
uh, specifically related to public safety and its implications, or
Oh,
AI's
yeah.
implications on that.
Totally. The public safety use cases are honestly so helpful when it comes to reducing the load of data entry on emergency personnel. However, there are people's lives at stake. There are people's like legal cases that are going to
Mhm.
be involved. in the records that are created with these systems. So that was the second half of the point that I was going to make, is it depends on the use case. It depends on the sector. If you are using it in a county's customer service office and they're just asking what's the address of the place where I need to mail this check, then that is usually not pushed back against as much as something like a sentiment analysis of a police officer's body cam footage, which is well known to still have a tendency towards bias. AI is not good at that yet, analyzing video footage and telling a human what happened. So part of what the GovAI Coalition's policy templates include is actually, this is how they're approaching it, things to like pieces that you can insert into your policies that say, we will not use this, this is not allowed. Like specific no's and an open-ended yes, rather than the other way around.
No, that's a great point. So, I think that's the way forward for testing out the things that you do want to do, and for sure, not going into the sort of hairy topics. And it also makes me think of whether, as we do AI readiness assessments for our clients, we need a scale of maturity on which to grade the readiness, right? Almost like the CMMS module or methodology for grading. How ready are you for a certain piece of technology or piece of change? And I think AI falls right there. Let's take another question. What role does AI play in enhancing citizen engagement and feedback mechanisms in local governments? These are some of the lower hanging fruit that we've seen, right? Some quick hit opportunities for the use of AI. What are you seeing in the coalition?
I've seen a few examples of, I think there was actually one example from Tampa, Hillsborough County, shout out, where there's an AI chatbot that was implemented well, because this can happen. They can be implemented well and they can be helpful to citizens, that responded to citizen queries about, tax policies and stuff like that. And because this was a bot, during the time when a hurricane hit the county, they were still able to offer customer service even when they were not able to come to the building or internet was down. This bot was still there, still alive, still responding to Facebook messages that were sent to the county's tax office. So that is one particularly good use case, where these models are trained on a closed set of data that is not fed to any other model, not used to train anybody else's system. All of these things were considered well and implemented with a thoughtful attitude, and it ended up going great.
What about hallucinations? I mean, that's still a huge problem with LLMs. Like when you let AI agents run through your something as critical as emergency response, you don't want the agent making up things that don't exist. What's the discussion around that?
It's such a debate. It has not been decided who is responsible for that sort of thing. The thing, like, when we say we don't know, it's because we don't know what's really going to happen, but we do know something. The people who are programming these solutions, they do know something. They have tested certain statistics about their models. They can say it's 90% accurate or something, but then again, how precise is it? And also, how secure is it? And is it using data that might include bias? Is it likely to drift? These kinds of things are the things that are put onto these AI fact sheets, because it's super important public sector agencies know what we do know, because we do know something when they are trying to make these procurement related decisions. And the other part of that is just policy. when you're using these tools, whose job is it to check the output? And that comes down to training as well as policy.
So let me ask you this. When you said whose job is it, who's taking the lead? Is it a city or county's executive management that's showing up to the coalition meetings? Is it IT? Who's involved?
Elected officials, IT people, vendors, people like me. A lot of people are showing up to these coalition meetings, and it's hard to say whether there's a trend right now. It's so early on that, I mean, this might be controversial to say, but it's so early on that it seems like the vendors are taking the lead, and that concerns some people. And a lot of emphasis is being placed on being able to have a voice in this conversation that is just as loud as the people creating the products when it comes to using them in the public sector.
I don't see a problem with vendors. I mean, they've got the most incentive, right? They've got the least to lose. So then it comes down to which agency is willing to take that risk on something new that doesn't exist today, and then you want to, from a risk perspective, how much are you willing to take on in terms of potential policy violations? But then again, these policies don't exist. So back to what we always say, right? Thinking about the outcomes and what you want a thing to do for you, for your organization, is super critical, because these Lego blocks exist, and more so going forward, they're going to be easier to put together, and the art will lie in identifying what it is you want done for your organization. And I hope that is the tone that is in the coalition and these meetings you're attending.
And I think the tone is that when we're talking about these legal issues, vendors stay quiet. They're just listening. They just want to know what they're going to be required to do in the future, because in the end, these public sector customers, if they're a large part of their target, they're going to need to comply with what they are demanding when it comes to those policy decisions.
Yeah. All right, question time. Let's take a Caleb Cruz. Hey, Caleb, welcome to the show. Will we start seeing local governments that have more available funding to invest in AI heavily outperform other local governments that are not in the same position? If so, what kind of effect could this have between larger city governments compared? What a great question. Is it, how much does funding impact how far an agency gets with AI? Or will they be the first ones out there making mistakes that we can learn from?
Will smaller agencies be left in the dust when it comes to money, being able to buy a quality artificial intelligence solution? Is that what's being asked?
Essentially, yeah.
I think it's actually the opposite. So, sorry, Caleb. There has been a trend of rapidly increasing accessibility for these AI tools. It used to be that you had to be MIT. It used to be that you had to be, Silicon Valley and have supercomputers to be able to do the kinds of things that you can do on your phone now from the cloud. They're becoming rapidly more accessible. So that involves financially accessible as well. The budget for the product itself, I don't think is going to be the issue. The budget for the implementation and the preparation to make sure that the implementation goes well, it might be more of a deciding factor than the solutions costs themselves.
So you're saying the consulting around it, I mean, not necessarily us, but the thinking through what the outcomes should be, what processes you're trying to change, that's going to be the more pricey part of implementing something like this.
Well, because if it's done without proper consideration to several readiness factors, the implementation might go off without a hitch, but if something gets missed, the consequences could be very expensive down the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's see. Question time. How important is an independent consultant in implementing an AI strategy, as it will have to integrate with multiple data sources? Well, not just data source integration, it also is how does this fit into overall strategy? And again, it depends. Yes, it depends on who you are as an agency, how mature you are technically anyway,
Hmm.
and is AI an opportunity for you to catch up or to leapfrog certain technologies that you never got around to implementing? A good example could be, dashboarding and BI. BI has been the promise for over a decade now on solving the reporting issues for clients, but yet you go into client sites and that's the big deal. We can't get the reports out of this new system that we implemented. And so natural language reporting and being able to have conversations with your data is going to be, I think, the first real application um, of LLMs. Of course, you'll have to test it and make sure that it's not giving you inaccurate or fabricated data.
And if you can't get the reports you need out of your system right now, why? Because if it's because your data is not organized and you haven't clearly defined where all of these data points live and what they mean and what format they're in and how they relate to one another, then an AI is not going to do a much better job of it than your current system is anyway. So, what is the problem? Is it just the UI is bad, or is there something deeper going on? And whether you get an independent consultant to check that out, or you hire some IT resources internally to really investigate that, I just think it needs to be considered.
Yeah, and again, going back to how does this fit into overall strategy is really really important.
Hmm.
Um, Mistakes can be made if you jump in and rush into just one little piece and say we're going to implement this little thing, uh, little bot, or these days the more prevalent buzzword is our AI can do voice interactions without person on the other end knowing that there is not a human on the other side. So how does that fit into your overall strategy? How does it fit into your ERP system? Is your ERP vendor doing things like that to enhance their offerings? And are you ready for that? How do we avoid shadow AI from creeping into your organization? How do we have the right policies? So all of that needs to be taken into account holistically from a long-term strategy perspective. And I think that's where the noise tends to happen. It's not different from, I don't know, 5 years ago. Of course, cybersecurity took on a whole other meaning, um, where it was only being talked about very technically before that, right? As executive directors and mayors and CEOs get uh, more exposed to threats facing them, they started adopting that from a management standpoint, where it went beyond just the blinky lights in the data center. There was a management aspect to cybersecurity.
Hmm.
I think with AI, we're kind of starting in the same place, but there's more attention because of how prevalent AI is, as it's being talked about in the marketplace, that top managers and executives are looking at it really closely before a trigger is pulled on implementation of any kind.
Side note, speaking of strategy, if you
Yeah.
haven't done a cybersecurity assessment first, I would not recommend even thinking about implementing an AI.
Yeah.
You got to have your priorities straight. Just wanted to throw that one out there.
Well, and I think one of our upcoming lives is about just that, right? How do you do IT strategy today? It's not the same
Hmm.
old model from 10 years ago where you just looked at your ERP systems and your tech stack and made recommendations. This is a whole other ballgame that really helps a forward-thinking organization leapfrog some really horrible technologies that have shown up in the last 5 years, some bad methodologies, and that is what I mean. I think we're on the same page here. Take a look at everything holistically, because you may not be ready for AI. You may not be ready to implement it, but it's never too early to start talking about it, because it is going to impact the way we do business um, here shortly. So shameless plug, call us if you need to look at your organization as a whole.
Yeah.
You want a technology strategy that has an AI strategy as a big component to it, and we would be happy to talk to you about that.
There are steps you can take to be ready, and we can help.
So here's a cool question. What about the people side of AI? How do you implement these innovations without creating massive disruption within your culture?
I
I'll let
love
you
this
take that.
question. Change management, please, please. Inform people early and often what's coming. Inform people of the benefits of what's coming. Make sure that they have the resources they need to be ready and use it properly. Make sure management receives the proper information and training, as well as the people who are going to be using it from day to day. We don't want to disrupt the operations in a bad way. We want to disrupt them in a good way, right? Um, so that's along with having the policies like we've just absolutely beat into the ground, training, change management, making sure everyone's informed, all those things are key to making sure your implementation is a success. And even if it's not an implementation, if it's a shadow AI, people need to be trained as well.
So if you weren't talking about AI, you were talking about ERP, these would be the same recommendations, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's a new technology, but the things that go around it does not change. Change management remains change management. The theory and practice of
Yeah.
implementing and introducing change and keeping up with, now this is a whole other degree of change and speed of change. The practice of change management remains the same, and the practice of consulting for tech change and digital transformation remains the same.
Good point.
And 10 years from now, we'll probably be talking about some other new thing, and
Mm-hmm.
everything around it will probably, as far as fundamentals of thinking through change, will remain the same.
Change management has to be a strategy. It can't just be a thing you do one time. It has to be a thing you're constantly doing. And I think that people in public sector agencies, when they get their shadow AI, their first Trojan horse, they're realizing that, like, oh, we did not have a plan in place to deal with this.
Hmm. Well, and shadow AI doesn't necessarily have to be AI from a third party vendor. It's people using ChatGPT. Like, I
Yes.
mean, how do you police that? How do you? We went through this internally, right? We had
Hmm.
started using Jasper and then ChatGPT, and then we got everybody encouraged to use ChatGPT. And then we got an enterprise account, um, and I don't know what else is out there that people are using to enhance their workflows, enhance their daily interactions with
Hmm.
work. So Megan asks, so when do you start? When and how do you start the conversation about AI within your organization?
Yesterday.
Okay, tell us why.
Yesterday.
Give us some compelling reasons for why it may be too late if you're asking this question
Constantly.
to me.
Yesterday and constantly. There's always going to be something new. So you need to have a strategy in place to deal with things that pop up that you didn't expect.
Hmm.
That's one of the major things that is part of some of the GovAI policies that they're recommending is like be able to be quick on your feet when it comes to training people, informing people, having policies in your organization. That's why they recommend having like a blanket yes with several very specific no's.
Yeah,
That
that's
way
good.
people know how to approach things. Like they can be given a tool and be like, okay, is this all right? Can I use this? And if the policy says yes, they can continue and they know how to. So make sure everybody is trained when they're onboarded on what the appropriate use of an AI is in your organization.
So let's wrap up with a couple of more questions and comments. Um, I think we covered all the questions, but I'm curious about something you said before we got on this, uh, before we went live. It
Oh
was
boy.
no, it was data management and governance.
Mm,
Um, how is this different from, when you start talking about um, AI, when you're even talking about ERP implementations, then you're a part of a couple right now, right?
yes.
That data governance and data security and data hygiene is top of mind. Is it the same concept for implementing or thinking about AI, or is there an added layer of scrutiny on where your data sits and what shape it's in?
It is a highly important topic. It's one of the main factors, I think, of an AI readiness plan is data governance, data management. There's one way that it kind of goes beyond the readiness to implement something like a Power BI dashboard, for example. And I believe that is related to the ownership and the access capabilities. Like, how do I explain? You might be able to translate what I'm saying. If this goes into your database, can it also be used to answer your external chatbot questions that citizens ask?
Mm-hmm.
If a citizen asks a question, can this document be used as a source for the answer and shared with them as the source of the answer the chatbot gives them? Or is it something that is internal only and should not be used in the database of facts and figures that bot can use? And I think that this is a huge part of the data governance that many organizations will not be prepared for, putting that flag on certain things. And it will require some heavy lifting on the part of anybody trying to implement something like that.
So again, this isn't that part isn't new, right? When you're talking about transparency, right? Another key element of a good technology strategy. What are you willing to show to the public that you serve? It's a spectrum. Some clients are like, we don't want to show them anything. The annual budget has all the information. The other end is they're showing every purchase order, every
Mhm.
transaction that happens in their ERP system. So when you say transparency, depends on who you're talking to, uh,
Yeah.
and what their reaction is. So it's the same kind of concept here, but the key sort of technical question is how do you put walls around the data that you don't want
Mhm.
uh, anyone in the public to see if your stance on transparency is on the more conservative side.
Yeah, that's been something. Somebody mentioned it with their content management system that builds their website. They have like an Open Cities website, right? And when you look inside of that thing, it is chaos because there are old pieces of information that are in that system and are not available through any click through links, but are still in the database. So, how is if you're implementing an LLM based chatbot that uses the information on your website, which is common, uses the information on your website to answer questions, how does it know that that information is current? Or if it's from 10 years ago and just was never deleted or flagged as
Yeah.
such.
Yeah.
So, data governance.
Data governance, change management, project management, strategic planning.
You need some help?
Well, I
You're
mean, the
here.
point I'm trying to make is all of those old and tried and tested things in a new sort of uh, bottle called AI. Of course, this is um, early days, and I thank you for your work on the coalition, and I urge you to check out our offerings in this field, and definitely download the 2025 report. We go live every week, typically on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. And this live stream will then turn into a podcast and blog posts and all kinds of wonderful content that is available for you, the audience, freely on our website and social channels. So, like Clay said, if you need help identifying your uh, spot in the AI readiness spectrum, give us a call. We have some really cool offerings on that.
And please check out the GovAI coalition with the city of San Jose. Please, huge shout out to them. They are
Yeah,
doing amazing work out there. They have resources. Come join the meetings. These conversations are so insightful. I can't recommend it enough. Please come join the conversation.
awesome. Thank you, Clay. I look forward to doing this again and getting another update in the next couple of months. So,
All right. Thank you,
thank you for
AV.
joining us, everybody.